small introduction to the entire industry. India has a coastline of more than 7,000 kilometers, and we have a large number of species of seaweed, over 800 species of seaweed that have been recorded, if not more. And our largest industry is essentially the hydrocolloid industry. The industry is diversifying into other products, but right now it is dominated by the hydrocolloid industry, which basically means that a lot of the gels that are extracted from the seaweed that we produce goes into products such as toothpaste, ice creams, face creams, and a range of other products where we don't actually see it as seaweed, but it's sort of the gel from the seaweed. And the states that are currently leading in terms of seaweed production and harvesting in the country right now are the states of Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, and Maharashtra. But there are a lot of other states that can actually participate in terms of improving the industry. If we also look at it in terms of communities, because I think it's incredibly important to consider both the environment as well as communities when we talk about seaweed. So unfortunately, even though India has huge potential in terms of the seaweed industry, right now the industry is quite unregulated. We don't have sufficient policy surrounding it. And as a result of this, there are quite a few discrepancies. So if we look at it in terms of community, it's largely run by women. There are over 5,000 women, for example, in the coastal state of Tamil Nadu that participate in the seaweed industry. They have a lot of job security. They have issues in terms of the gear that they use. And there's also a lot of issues when it comes to post-processing. And so in terms of that, there's also the issue of over-harvesting. Because this industry is very low paying and low value, a lot of the women tend to over-harvest, not for any fault of their own, but because the industry demands it. And so it's so important in that sense to really consider both the community that is reliant on the industry right now, and also the environment that is currently being damaged and actually needs to be protected. And then if we look at the next slide, yes, this is the potential market. So as of now, India's main market is the hydrocolloid industry, as I mentioned before, but we have huge potential in terms of food and cosmetics, as well as in terms of fertilizer and other products. However, again, it's really important to look at how we value seaweed. So if we look at it from just the lens of market, we will fail to realize that seaweed is actually also a very important ecosystem for India. So like Vasa was saying, it's really important for biodiversity. It's really important for climate change mitigation because it absorbs a lot of carbon. And it's also really important to look at seaweed forests, much like we look at land forests, which is that they have an intrinsic value to be present in the ocean, regardless of what market opportunities arise. And so it's super important right now to really look at how we manage these seaweed reserves, not only in terms of the market, but also in terms of the fact that we need to have seaweed biodiversity, we need to have more seaweed forests, and we need to protect the seaweed forests that we already have. And, oops. Okay, and for the last slide, I hope that this conversation that we have today reflects on the challenges that we have ahead of us. So just essentially right now, the challenges that we face are that we have a huge gap in policy. We do not have enough policy backing the emerging seaweed market, and that's a gap that we need to fill. We also have a gap in terms of communicating with coastal communities. So we need to have communities on board when we build this new seaweed value chain. And we also have a lot more guidelines that need to be put into place. So guidelines in terms of harvesting, in terms of farming, and just ensuring that seaweed has a sense of provenance, so we know where seaweed comes from, and we can map these supply chains, and therefore we can move towards building more climate smart, ecologically sensitive, and socially strong seaweed value chain.